Hey everyone, I'm your author June. Before we get started, I really would appreciate it if everyone could hit the subscribe button. It helps me grow the channel, and I would love for all of you to come on this journey with me, as a family. Now, let's get into the story. Let me know if you enjoy. The chime above the door of Blake's Mercantile, a sound interwoven with Sadie's memories, announced a customer. She looked up from the pickle brine, pasting on a smile as Mrs. Henderson lumbered in, her dress a riot of floral print threatening to burst. "Mornin', Sadie. Just need some sugar, and maybe a crumb of news, if any's about." A light chuckle escaped Sadie, briefly filling the high-ceilinged space. "Morning, Mrs. Henderson. Sugar aplenty. News a well. This town's got a short memory for stories." She measured out the sugar, the crystals glinting like captured starlight. Outside, the Kansas sun hammered Main Street, turning the road to a wavering mirage. A lone tumbleweed pirouetted across the blacktop, a poignant reminder of Sadie's own caged spirit. The Mercantile, a family heirloom, was a duty she was expected to cherish. Lately, though, it felt like a gilded cage, familiar faces, recycled conversations, an unending vista of wheat fields blending into the horizon. She craved something more, something beyond the confines of Harmony Creek. "Heard tell young Thomas squired Maggie Sue clear to Wichita," Mrs. Henderson gossiped, snapping Sadie back to reality. Imagine, clear to Wichita. Sadie masked her lack of interest in her mind. Wichita was a shimmering beacon, a bustling metropolis compared to their somnolent hamlet. Handing over the sugar, she completed the transaction. 15 cents, Mrs. Henderson. As the woman hunted for change, Sadie's gaze drifted to the slender bookshelf nestled in the corner, her portal to untold worlds. Later, during her lunch break, Sadie retreated behind a counter with "Around the World in 80 Days, its spine well-worn. She devoured the narrative, picturing herself aboard a grand vessel, traversing far-flung lands, meeting daring individuals. Phileas Fogg's resolve struck a chord deep within her, mirroring her own suppressed desires. The bell remained quiet, a rare pocket of serenity in the usually bustling store. She let her imagination soar, conjuring images of snow-dusted peaks, sprawling deserts, and vibrant, teeming cityscapes. Anywhere but here. A loose page spiraled from the binding, landing unnoticed. Retrieving it, she discovered a tiny advertisement tucked amidst the pages, easily missed before. It advertised a pen pal program, connecting Eastern women with Western ranchers. "Seeking a fresh start? Correspond with men of the frontier," the banner proclaimed. Her pulse quickened. It felt like a lifeline thrown at just the right moment. She devoured the details, tracing names and sparse descriptions with her finger. Most were plain, listing only occupation and location. But one name resonated: Colt McRae, Montana. The description was stripped down to bare essentials. Rancher, seeks genuine correspondence. The stark simplicity stirred something within her. Montana. The very word conjured images of majestic peaks, expansive skies, and an existence utterly divorced from the suffocating predictability of Harmony Creek. Hesitation gripped her. It was a reckless notion, a childish whim. She was practical, not some lovesick girl envisioning a cowboy romance. Yet, the yearning within her was too insistent to ignore. What was there to lose? A stamp? A few moments of her time. Compared to the vast emptiness she felt, the price was trivial. That evening, after closing the store, Sadie perched at her small desk, illuminated by a single lamp. The house's stillness amplified the frantic drumbeat of her heart. She pulled out parchment, her fingers betraying her nervousness as she dipped her pen in ink. What does one say to a stranger, a man living in a world she only knew from the printed page? She worried at the pen's end, her brow furrowed. Finally, she began, choosing her words with care, revealing little but hinting at the discontent within. "Dear Mr. McRae," she wrote, "I noticed your advertisement in the Pen Pal program and felt drawn to respond. I am Sadie Blake, living in Harmony Creek, Kansas, and working at my family's mercantile. Life here is uneventful. I find joy in reading and discovering new places. I would be interested to hear more about your life in Montana." She paused, rereading the stilted prose. It sounded so vapid, lacking the turbulence she felt, but she couldn't reveal her soul just yet. "I hope to hear from you soon," she finished, adding simply, "Sincerely, Sadie Blake." Sealing the letter, her fingers lingered on the paper. It felt as if she were launching a part of herself into the unknown, a fragile aspiration carried on whispered hopes. She addressed the envelope, her hand unsteady as she inked Colt McRae, Montana. The sheer expanse between them suddenly felt daunting. What if he didn't reply? What if she disappointed him? What if he shattered her illusions? She banished the doubts, clinging to the nascent hope that had begun to bloom. She walked to the post office, the only establishment still illuminated. The air was crisp, carrying the fragrance of freshly mown hay. The stars glittered in the deep indigo sky, a million tiny lights mirroring the longing in her spirit. She dropped the letter into the slot, the metallic thud echoing in the still night. As she turned for home, she couldn't quell the feeling that she had embarked on a journey, one that would carry her far from the dusty borders of Harmony Creek. The solitary rancher, the Montana wind, a biting lash, circled Colt McRae as he scanned his spread. Miniature cyclones of dust jittered across the arid land, echoing the unease that gripped him. Above, the sun, an unblinking sentinel, seared his face, deepening the crags etched by sun-bleached days, loss, and isolation. He adjusted his hat, a reflexive motion, a barrier against intrusion. The cattle's lowing, a lugubrious chorus, mirrored the ache in his soul. 5 years. Half a decade since the crash. Since he severed the thought, jamming it back into the vault where he stored the festering memories. He'd learned to coexist with the specters, to function despite the abiding pain. Yet some days, like this one, the stillness was crushing, the solitude a palpable weight pressing down on him, as vast as the heavens. He peeled away from the fence post, the splintered wood rasping against his rough palm. He needed to inspect the south acreage, ensure the new calves were thriving. Anything to remain in motion, to occupy his mind, to stave off reflection. He mounted Phantom, his steadfast Appaloosa, and urged him onward. The horse responded with a puff of breath, a cloud in the crisp air. Their progress was marked only by the squeak of saddle leather, the steady beat of hooves, and the forlorn cry of a hawk spiraling high above. A desolate harmony, one Colt had grown accustomed to, the backdrop to his existence. Back at the house, the mail lay unclaimed on the porch swing, a modest pile of envelopes and circulars baking in the afternoon heat. He dismounted, his joints protesting after the long ride. He sifted through the stack, a statement from the feed supplier, an advertisement for a cutting-edge tractor, and then a missive, addressed to him in an unfamiliar, elegant hand, postmarked Harmony Creek, Kansas. A furrow creased his brow as he turned it over. He didn't recognize the name. Sadie Blake, he recalled, Distantly, an ad in some periodical concerning a pen pal service, women seeking companionship. He'd scoffed then, dismissing it as foolish fancy. Yet someone, somewhere, had considered him. He carried the mail inside, discarding the junk onto the kitchen table. The house remained undisturbed, hushed. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating drifting particles. He tore open the feed store statement, reviewed it swiftly, and set it aside. His gaze lingered on the letter from Sadie Blake. What could a Kansas woman possibly want with a worn-out rancher from Montana? He newly pitched it into the waste bin, deeming it unworthy of his time. But something stayed his hand, a whisper of curiosity, a fervent desire for connection. He couldn't decipher it. He retrieved a knife from the drawer and carefully sliced open the envelope. He unfolded the letter. The paper was delicate and rustled softly. A subtle fragrance of lavender arose, an unexpected and refined scent that momentarily dispelled the stale atmosphere of the kitchen. He began to read. The writing was meticulous and even, each character deliberately formed. She described Harmony Creek, the family store where she assisted, the limitless fields of wheat extending to the horizon. She shared her aspirations, her ambitions, her yearning for something beyond. Her words possessed a quiet fortitude, a resilience that struck a chord within him. He finished the letter, perplexed. He was unsure what to make of it. He hadn't received a personal note in he couldn't recall how long. He reread it, seeking some hidden agenda, some ulterior motive. But there was none, only a sincere, heartfelt invitation to correspond. His eyes swept the vacant kitchen, the worn furnishings, the faded wallpaper. The silence felt oppressive, heavier than before. He walked to the window and gazed out at the sprawling expanse of his ranch. The sun dipped toward the horizon, drawing long shadows across the land. He saw Phantom grazing placidly in the pasture, the cattle clustered near the creek. A beautiful, desolate place. His place. But a solitary one. He turned from the window, resolve solidifying. He crossed to the antiquated roll-top desk in the corner, unused for years. He pulled it open, its hinges groaning in protest. He located a pen and a sheet of stationery, the paper ivory with age. He sat, the pen hovering over the untouched page. What could he possibly convey to this woman, this stranger who had reached out across the divide? He offered her nothing but a shattered heart and a remote ranch. He stalled, the pen poised. Perhaps it was an error. Perhaps he should simply discard the letter and forget it. But the memory of her words, her hopes, her longings, persisted. He dipped the pen in the inkwell, the nib scratching delicately. He inhaled deeply and commenced to write. It was ungainly, awkward, yet sincere. He recounted the ranch, the cattle, the boundless sky. He confessed to the loneliness, the quiet, the lingering ghosts. He omitted the accident. For now, he was not prepared to reveal that part of himself. He completed the letter, reviewed it, and cringed. It paled in comparison to her eloquent prose. Still, it was him. Authentically so. He folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and addressed it to Sadie Blake, Harmony Creek, Kansas. He walked out to the porch, deposited the letter in the mailbox, and watched as the wind propelled a lone tumbleweed down the dusty track. A small act, a simple offering, yet it felt like something more meaningful. It felt like possibility, an opening to connect, to share, to perhaps, just perhaps, discover a glimmer of light amidst the gloom. He re-entered the house, still silent, yet somehow, tonight, the silence resonated less acutely. Ink and longing the Kansas wind, an unyielding hand shaping the plains, sighed a mournful air around Sadie's small cottage. Each rush of air vibrated the window panes, a constant reminder of the immense prairie stretching beyond Harmony Creek. Yet inside, anticipation simmered, a cozy warmth battling the autumnal crispness. It centered on the postman's daily visit, a moment Sadie anticipated with a nervous excitement she hadn't known in years. She'd put the kettle on, its cinnamon clove aroma a hopeful offering against the afternoon's stillness, and flitted about, ensuring the already pristine parlor was beyond reproach, patting imaginary creases from the prey. Crocheted doilies. The approaching clip-clop of hooves on the dirt road was her cue. Sadie peeked through the lace, her breath clouding the glass. There he was, dear Mr. Abernathy, astride his patient mare, Clementine, his worn leather mailbag at his side. He was a deliberate deliverer, a man measured by decades, not minutes, but today, Sadie struggled to contain her eagerness. He halted at her gate, a genial wave etching deeper lines into his sun-weathered face. "Afternoon, Sadie. Got a piece for you today." He delved into his bag, the leather groaning like an old tree, and retrieved a solitary envelope. A Montana postmark. Sadie's pulse quickened. "Thank you kindly, Mr. Abernathy," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. She hurried inside, the letter cradled in her hands like a fledgling bird. Back in the parlor, she carefully sliced the envelope open with a bone letter opener, her fingers betraying a slight tremor. The paper felt substantial beneath her fingertips, the script bold and surprisingly refined. From Colt, hundreds of miles away, nestled within Montana's rugged foothills, Colt leaned over his desk, the candle flame casting long, restless shadows on the cabin's log walls. He worried at the end of his pen, the taste of wood and ink familiar and grounding. Beyond the cabin, the wind sang a different tune, a fierce, untamed melody echoing the vast landscape and his tangled emotions. He found himself craving Sadie's letters with an intensity that startled him. Her tales of Harmony Creek, of the waving wheat fields and the interwoven community, conjured a world so unlike his isolated life. She wrote of church gatherings and quilting circles, of pie competitions and village tales, details that seemed both commonplace and utterly captivating. In return, he tried to capture Montana's immensity, the stark beauty of the mountains, the silence that could both soothe and torment. He dipped his pen, the ink's coolness a sharp contrast to the burgeoning warmth within. He hesitated, unsure how much of himself he dared to expose. He'd already detailed the ranch, the constant cycle of fence repairs and tending livestock, the seasonal rhythms that governed his existence. But Sarah remained unspoken. Not yet. He wrote instead of a hawk he'd observed that morning, soaring overhead, its sharp eyes probing the terrain. He described the sun-drenched gleam of its plumage, the embodied sense of freedom and might. Then, emboldened by the darkness and the intimacy of the candlelight, he added a more personal touch. "The silence here can be a heavy blanket, Sadie. Sometimes I think it's trying to tell me something. Your letters, they pierce that blanket. They're like a songbird amidst a blizzard." He reread the words, a faint wince creasing his brow. Too soft? Too revealing? He nearly crumpled the page, but then he recalled the vulnerability woven into Sadie's own letters, the subtle hints of the sorrow that mirrored his own. He folded the letter, sealed it with wax, and addressed it to Harmony Creek, Kansas. He'd ride to town to mail it come morning. Sadie devoured Colt's letter, her eyes tracing the familiar script with an eagerness she hadn't acknowledged. He wrote of the hawk, of the expansive sky, and then those few simple words about the silence and her letters. A sensation of warmth bloomed within her, dispelling the lingering chill of the Kansas wind. She rose and approached the window, her gaze drawn to the darkening fields. Fireflies flickered into existence, their tiny lights mimicking distant stars. She pictured Colt, a silhouette against the immense Montana sky, his face reflecting the same loneliness she knew so well. She settled at her writing desk, a cherished piece of furniture passed down from her grandmother. She uncapped her inkwell, the scent of iron and gall a familiar comfort. What to impart? How to convey the burgeoning emotions within? She wrote of Harmony Creek, of the approaching harvest festival, of the light-hearted gossip gleaned at the general store. She wrote of the simple joys that sustained her. But then, emulating Colt, she ventured into more vulnerable territory. "You inquired about my life before Harmony Creek," she penned, her hand wavering slightly as she formed the words. "There isn't much to recount. A husband, lost too soon to illness. A life in St. Louis that wasn't right for me. I sought peace in Kansas, a quiet place to mend. But sometimes, quiet can be as overwhelming as the silence you describe. Your letters, they reassure me that I'm not entirely alone." She paused, then added one more sentence, a thought that had been circling within her for days. "I find myself wondering what it would be like to witness those Montana mountains firsthand." She sealed the letter, her heart thrumming. It was a gamble, a bold expression of something she barely understood. Yet, as she walked to the post office the following morning, the Kansas sun warming her face, she couldn't dismiss the feeling that she was finally moving towards something, rather than simply running away. Weeks blurred into months, and the correspondence continued to shuttle between Kansas and Montana, each letter a slender bridge across the great distance. Sadie learned of Colt's ranch, his taciturn but devoted foreman, Jed, the wild mustangs roaming the hills. She discovered his deep connection to the land, his reverence for the natural world. Colt, in turn, discovered Sadie's quiet fortitude, her unwavering optimism, her unexpected wit. He learned of her passion for gardening, her skill at baking, her profound empathy. He even learned of her award-winning zucchini, a detail that drew a rare chuckle from him. Slowly, cautiously, they began to reveal more of their histories. Sadie shared the story of her late husband Thomas, their shared dreams, and the lingering grief she carried. Colt, at long last, wrote of Sarah. He spared the graphic details, but divulged that she was his late wife, that she had died in a misfortune, and that he carried the load of that sorrow. He didn't assume she would comprehend, but that it was necessary she know. Sadie's reply proved straightforward and heartfelt. "Grief is a weighty burden, Colt, but it doesn't have to define you." Her words struck a chord, offering a glimmer of hope within the darkness. He realized then that Sadie was more than a pen pal, a distant voice offering solace. She was a lifeline. One evening, as Colt sat by the fire, revisiting Sadie's latest missive, he arrived at a decision. He would invite her to Montana. He would invite her to behold the mountains, to inhale the clean air, to be present at the grand scale of the land that both haunted and upheld him. He knew the risk, that she may not be the woman he envisioned, that he may not be the man she anticipated. Yet, he couldn't dismiss the pull, the undeniable bond that had flourished between them through ink and longing. Confessions in script, the Kansas sun, a relentless hammer, pounded on Sadie's back as she leaned over the time-worn desk in her cramped room. Dust motes danced in the still air, laced with a whisper of Mrs. Henderson's cinnamon rolls from the bakery below. Her window framed the somnolent main street of Harmony Creek, a vista so familiar it felt like a brand. Today, it was a gilded cage. She dipped her pen, resuming her missive to Colt. Montana, it breathes freedom. Here, the horizon feels like a leash, a constant reminder of dreams deferred. I've yearned to escape Harmony Creek since childhood. This town a sepia-toned memory, its vibrancy bleached by years of routine. Everyone is an open book to everyone else. There's solace in that predictability, perhaps, but also a suffocating lack of space. I crave the uncharted territory of call. Anonymity. Colt, I long to shed this skin and discover who else I might become. It sounds whimsical, I know, a woman on the cusp of 30 chasing phantom selves. But the thought of a life measured in cups of flour, the endless cycle of church, potlucks, a marriage to a man whose history is intertwined with my own. It's a noose tightening around my throat. Selfish, isn't it? Mama praises contentment, a grace I seem incapable of finding. She paused, a flush warming her cheeks as she scanned her confession. Too much? Would her restless spirit frighten him away? With a sigh, she added a wry aside about her penchant for drama, hoping to inject a lighter note. Sealing the letter, the crimson wax was a small, defiant flag planted on the battlefield of her mundane existence. Days later, Colt sat on his porch, the Montana sky ablaze with the final strokes of sunset. He held Sadie's letter, the delicate loops of her handwriting a fragile thing against the roughness of his hands. He'd absorbed its meaning 3 times over, each reading revealing a deeper stratum of vulnerability, a mirroring of his own hidden longings. He knew evasion was no longer an option. He owed her the truth behind the walls he'd constructed. Gathering his own implements, the lamplight stretched his shadow long across the weathered boards as he began. "Sadie," he wrote, his hand awkward with the unfamiliar task. "You inquire about my solitude, about the reason I distanced myself from civilization. The reality, I haven't always been alone. I had a wife, Sarah, and a daughter, Lily. They were my universe, the luminaries that lit my life. We lived in a humble cabin nestled higher in the mountains. A fire IT ignited in the dead of night. I tried to rescue them, Sadie. I swear to God I did. But the flames, they moved like demons. I escaped. Barely. They didn't." He broke off, the memory a jagged shard lodged in his soul. The acrid smell of burning timbers, the echoes of screams they stalked his waking hours. He took a swig of whiskey, the harshness a temporary shield against the engulfing despair. The guilt, an unbearable weight. Some claim I bear no fault, that it was merely a cruel twist of fate. But I remain convinced of my culpability. Perhaps had I inspected the chimney that day, perhaps if exhaustion hadn't claimed me so completely, perhaps they would still be here. After the inferno, I couldn't remain in that cabin, couldn't endure the constant company of specters. I relocated here, to this spread. It's a desolate existence, but perhaps it's the penance I deserve. I harbor no expectation of understanding, Sadie. I simply felt compelled to reveal the truth. You are entitled to that much." He paused, then added a final sentence, a faint glimmer of dawn penetrating the long night. "Your letter stirred something dormant within me, a nascent possibility. Thank you." Back in Kansas, Sadie's fingers trembled as she received Colt's letter. The unflinching honesty of his confession, the profound depths of his sorrow, resonated with the hidden ache in her own heart. Her own losses paled beside his, yet the shared landscape of grief created a subtle kinship, a wordless understanding that bridged the distance. She reread the letter, tears blurring the inked words. She perceived not a shattered, haunted recluse, but a survivor, one who had weathered unimaginable storms and still possessed the courage to extend a hand, to reach out. A wave of compassion washed over her, a fierce protectiveness for this stranger. She responded immediately, the words pouring forth with a newfound clarity, unburdened by hesitation. "Colt," she began, "thank you for entrusting me with your story. I cannot fathom the depths of your suffering, but I want you to know that I am here. I am here to lend an ear, to offer whatever solace I can. Discard the notion that you are destined for solitude. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even in the aftermath of tragedy. And please, release yourself from the chains of blame. Some calamities transcend our control. Our true measure lies in how we navigate the aftermath. You are not defined by the shadows of your past, Colt. You are defined by your strength, your perseverance, your willingness to expose your heart, even after it has been irrevocably broken." She concluded with a bold invitation, a proposition that sent a shiver of anticipation and trepidation through her. "I am coming to McRae, Montana. Colt, I yearn to meet you in person, to see your ranch with my own eyes, to fill my lungs with the same air you breathe. I recognize the inherent risk, the possibility that our expectations may not align with reality. But I must take this leap. I must discover if the bond we've forged through correspondence can solidify into something tangible. I will be arriving in Billings on the 15th. If you desire to meet me, I will await you at the train depot." She sealed the letter, her pulse echoing in her ears. It was a wager placed on a future yet unwritten. But for the first time in years, Sadie felt a fragile tendril of hope unfurl within her, a conviction that perhaps, just perhaps, she could sculpt the life she had always envisioned, a life brimming with love, purpose, and a connection that transcended mere words. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could guide Colt back into the light. A bold decision, the time-worn map of Montana sprawled on Sadie's kitchen table, its crinkled surface whispering of adventure. Her coffee, long forgotten, had grown tepid in its mug, leaving a stain darker than the Kansas wheat fields stretching outside her window. How distant seemed the predictable cadence of Harmony Creek from those majestic peaks and sweeping plains. Her fingertip traced the path to Marietta, a mere pinprick on the map, the location of Colt McRae. That tiny spot held a pledge, a challenge. She'd absorbed his missives over the past days, each phrase imprinted in her mind. His candor, stark and unyielding, had awakened a part of her she'd believed lost to time, a yearning for something beyond the conventional smiles and stifled expectations of her small town. Pushing back from the table, the chair legs rasped against the worn linoleum, a sound that cut through the quietude. The decision, once a delicate seed of possibility, had blossomed into resolute action. She would go, really go. A nervous anticipation fluttered in her chest, a sensation unfamiliar after years of quiet routine excitement laced with trepidation. What if he was disillusioned? What if their bond was solely epistolary? What if Montana offered not an escape, but simply a different kind of confinement? She reached for her finest stationery, the corner adorned with subtly embossed wildflowers. The pen's nib scraped across the page as she began. "Colt," she penned, her hand betraying a slight tremor. "I'm coming to Montana." She paused, rereading the stark declaration. An irreversible step, she continued, detailing her motives, dreams, and anxieties. She laid bare her soul on the paper, mirroring the sincerity of his correspondence. She wrote of a compulsion to break free, a desperate need to validate the connection they shared. She voiced her longing for their meeting, to witness his gaze, to experience his voice firsthand. With a shaky hand, she sealed the envelope, pressing into the wax a hastily chosen sunflower, a token of Kansas traveling west. The following morning found Sadie at the diner, engaging in her customary Saturday meeting with Martha and Clara. The savory aroma of frying bacon and rich coffee hung in the air, the comforting backdrop to the revelation she was about to make. Martha, her brow, perpetually creased with worry, was already meticulously dissecting a blueberry muffin. Clara, the eternal optimist, recounted a recent church function. Sadie inhaled deeply. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice a touch too emphatic. Both women paused, their gazes fixed on her. "What is it, Sadie? You look like you've encountered a specter," Martha inquired, her frown deepening. "I'm going to Montana," Sadie declared abruptly. A profound silence settled over the table, broken only by the distant clatter of tree. "Cutlery," Clara spoke first. "Montana? Whatever for?" Sadie recounted the pen pal program. Colt, the exchange of letters. She revealed his sorrow, his isolation, and the affinity they had discovered. She articulated her own longing for a different existence, a life beyond the confines of Harmony Creek. Martha listened with a blend of astonishment and unease. "Sadie, you can't be serious. You're planning to traipse off to Montana to rendezvous with a man you've only corresponded with? A rancher? You know nothing about him." "I know what he's revealed to me," Sadie countered, a sharp purr. EJ to her voice. "And I know I must do this. I need to determine if there's something more." Clara, ever the conciliator, interjected. "Now, Martha, let's not jump to conclusions. Sadie is an independent woman, if she feels so compelled." "But it's so reckless, Clara. She's abandoning all prudence," Martha protested, her volume rising. "What if he's not genuine? What if he poses a threat?" "I've considered those possibilities," Sadie conceded. "But I have to seize this chance. I can't remain here, consumed by what-ifs for the remainder of my days." "When do you depart?" Clara inquired, her tone gentler. "Next week," Sadie answered. "I've already secured a train passage." Martha shook her head, her lips a thin line of disapproval. "I still maintain you're making an error, Sadie, but if you're determined, promise me you'll exercise caution, and that you'll keep in touch." "I promise," Sadie affirmed, reaching across the table to clasp Martha's hand. She turned to Clara, her eyes imploring for understanding. Clara offered a warm, encouraging smile. "Go, Sadie. Pursue your heart. And if it doesn't succeed, you're always welcome to return home." Leaving the diner, Sadie experienced a complex swirl of emotions. Relief at finally sharing her plans, anxiety about the journey ahead, and a vibrant thrill of anticipation coursing through her. She was abandoning her familiar surroundings, venturing into the unknown. Yet, for the first time in years, she felt genuinely vital. The sunflower wax seal represented more than just identification. It symbolized her own fragile optimism, blossoming despite uncertainty, reaching for the Montana sunlight. The train ticket nestled in her pocket felt substantial, weighty with anticipation. Anticipation and fear the Montana wind keened against the eaves of Colt's cabin, echoing the unease twisting in his stomach. The familiar, looping script on the envelope screamed Sadie, even before he registered the Kansas postmark. His pulse quickened, a frantic tattoo against the quiet hum of his solitude. He traced her name with a thumb roughened by labor, a hesitant caress, before ripping the letter open. Lavender's ghost bloomed in the air, a delicate counterpoint to the raw wood and aged leather of his home. Unfolding the letter, his hands trembled slightly. Her words blurred, ink feathered where eagerness, or perhaps trepidation, had marred the page. She was coming. Montana bound. Coming for him. A dizzy spell gripped him. He lowered himself onto the worn chair beside the cold hearth. The fire was nothing more than sullen, glowing embers in the encroaching dusk. He scanned the letter again, each phrase a sharp jab at his hard-won isolation. He'd relished their correspondence, the bond they'd nurtured across the miles, but the prospect of her arrival felt like a branding iron against his flesh. Rising, he sought his reflection in the cracked mirror above the wash basin. A dark stubble masked his jaw, etched with the chronicles of sleepless nights. His eyes, the shade of a bruised sky, held a haunted resignation that slumber couldn't mend. Was this the man she envisioned? The steadfast figure she'd pieced together from his carefully crafted words. He saw only a damaged soul, scarred by loss and weighted by regret. "She's in for a rude awakening," he rasped, his voice a rusty hinge. The mirror offered no solace, just a stark inventory of his failings. He raked a hand through his unkempt hair, the strands like sun-baked straw. He'd shared glimpses of his life, carefully chosen details showcasing resilience and grit. But the shadows, the darkness that clung to him like a second skin, he had kept hidden. Splashing frigid water on his face, the shock briefly sharpened his thoughts. A week. He had a week to prepare, not only the ranch, but himself. He needed to quell the specters that haunted these rooms, at least long enough for Sadie to perhaps glimpse what. What could he possibly hope she'd see? A spark of something salvageable? He snatched his weathered jacket and wandered into the deepening twilight. The horses shifted in the corral, their warm breath clouding in the frigid air, a small reassurance. He leaned against the fence, watching them, then started with the barn. The roof groaned with leaks, the stalls needed mucking. He toiled with feverish intensity, the exertion a temporary shield against the chaos in his mind. As the days dwindled, Colt channeled his energy into readying the ranch. He strengthened fences, cleared overgrown weeds, and even attempted a small garden, planting resilient crops that might withstand Montana's unforgiving climate. Each chore was a skirmish against the rising tide of apprehension threatening to consume him. He scoured the cabin, erasing layers of neglect and dust that had accumulated during his years of solitude. He even pulled out an antique quilt from the depths of an old trunk, its vibrant design a reminder of a life nearly forgotten. He found himself fixating on minutiae, agonizing over the smallest imperfections. The hairline fracture in a teacup, the faded image on the mantel. Each item seemed to magnify his own defects, his own broken state. He pictured Sadie's arrival, her gaze absorbing everything, piercing his carefully constructed facade to the flawed man beneath. One evening, perched on the porch as the sunset ignited the horizon, he retrieved a sheet of paper and began to write. He longed to explain, to forewarn her, but the words remained elusive. How could he possibly articulate the immensity of his fear, the burden of his history, without sending her running? He crushed the paper in his fist, a reflection of the crushing weight within. He couldn't remain concealed forever. Sadie was on her way, and he had to confront her, flaws laid bare. He could only pray that she might look past the shadows, beyond the shattered pieces, and discover something worth nurturing. The notion, both terrifying and thrilling, kept him restless throughout the night, the wind whispering her name through the cabin's drafty walls. He paced the creaking floorboards. The aroma of pine and aged dust stung his nostrils, a far cry from the lavender he imagined lingering on Sadie's skin. He had to improve. He had to make the effort. For her. Montana sunrise, the train lurched, brakes squealing like a cornered beast. Sadie's fingers, bone white, tightened around her valise. Montana. The very syllable had been a whispered promise, a landscape of dreams painted on the canvas of her imagination for weeks. But stepping off the train and onto the gritty platform, the sheer immensity struck her like a gust of wind. The air, sharp and bracing, carried the scent of pine and the feral tang of the wild. Above, the sky ballooned, an impossible expanse dogged with dawn's unreal colors. Harmony Creek felt not just distant, but a miniature world. Her gaze swept the sparse gathering. Families reunited, a lonesome rancher wrestling supplies, sun-chapped faces etched with lives lived outdoors. But not Colt. A note of apprehension cinched tight in her chest. Had he reconsidered? Had her carefully penned intimacies, those desperate confessions, been misconstrued? A tumbleweed, audacious in its loneliness, skipped across the tracks, an embodiment of the surrounding wilderness. A prickle of disquiet ran down her spine. This wasn't the predictable rhythms of Harmony Creek, where gossip was currency. This was a land of stark realities, raw beauty, and she was adrift. Then she spotted him. Set apart from the others, he leaned against a post worn smooth by time, a silhouette against the nascent sun. He was taller, broader than she'd pictured, radiating a quietude born of both resilience and fatigue. His hat obscured his features, but she discerned the strong line of his jaw. No smile played on his lips. Instead, an intense, unwavering scrutiny. Her pulse hammered in her ears, a frantic tattoo against the sudden hush. This was the crucible, the moment paper dreams met, flesh and blood. The man to whom she'd bared her soul in ink materialized. He pushed off the post, his gait slow, measured. Each stride diminished the space between fantasy and reality, between the nurtured hope and the encroaching doubt. He halted a few feet away, stormy gray eyes locking with hers. The silence stretched, thick and palpable, broken only by the lonely cry of a hawk riding the thermals. Sadie? His voice, deeper than expected, was rasped by wind and weather, carrying the echo of canyons. She swallowed, her throat suddenly parched. Colt? A curt nod. He removed his hat, revealing a face scored with the indelible marks of hardship and loss. His dark hair was laced with silver at the temples. He was older, more weathered, but a shared loneliness flickered in his gaze. "Welcome to Montana," he said, his tone flat, almost guarded. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a thread. Her grip tightened on her valise, feeling vulnerable under his appraisal. "It's breathtaking." His glance encompassed the vast vista, a fleeting, unreadable expression flitting across his face. "It can be." Another silence descended, heavier than the last. She yearned to say something, anything, to bridge the gulf between their correspondence and this stark encounter. But the words choked in her throat, strangled by rising anxiety. He shifted, his hand hovering near his hat brim. "The train give you any trouble?" "No, the journey was fine," she replied, relieved for the lifeline of a simple question. "Long, but uneventful," brought the wagon. He gestured towards a dust-coated vehicle. "Your trunk's already loaded." "Thank you," she repeated, feeling absurdly inadequate. Oh, to recapture the ease, the intimacy of those letters, the freedom to express herself unburdened by his presence. He lifted her valise, their fingers brushing. A sudden, unexpected current surged through her. She instantly looked away. "Ready to go?" he asked. She hesitated, inhaling the bracing mountain air. "Ready," she answered, though a part of her felt far from prepared. As they walked towards the wagon, the silence reformed, punctuated only by the crunch of gravel underfoot. She stole a glance at him, trying to decipher his closed expression. He seemed remote, inaccessible. Had she erred? Cultivated a chimera on the foundation of shared words, only to discover the reality to be something vastly different? He assisted her into the wagon, his touch brief, impersonal. He climbed aboard, took up the reins, and with a click of his tongue, they moved forward. The wagon rumbled down the dusty track, leaving Marietta shrinking in the distance. An endless panorama of undulating hills and distant peaks stretched before them. Sadie clutched the wagon's side, feeling the wind whip through her hair. She watched Colt, his jaw tight, his gaze fixed on the horizon. She had come seeking a new life, a connection, a chance at joy. Yet, as the sun climbed, painting long shadows across the land, she couldn't escape the feeling she'd stumbled into something far more complex, far more demanding than anticipated. The hope that had sustained her through weeks of anticipation felt frail, threatened by the sheer scale of the country and the enigmatic quiet of the man beside her. The letters, she realized with a growing unease, were merely the prologue. The real story, the one destined to shape her future, was only just beginning. Life on the ranch, the sky, bruised plum and coral, heralded a new dawn. Sadie stirred in the modest guest quarters, the sharp, clean tang of evergreens permeating the air. Sunlight, fractured by the rustic curtains, slashed across the time-worn floorboards in bright bars. She dressed swiftly, the unfamiliar jeans stiff against her skin, and emerged to find Colt already immersed in barn chores. He wielded a muck fork with practiced ease, clearing out stalls in a flurry of straw and dust. The barn reeked of sweet hay and pungent manure. He registered her approach with a brief, inscrutable glance. "Slept okay?" he rasped, his voice husky. "Yes, thank you," Sadie responded, meeting his guarded gaze. "How can I pitch in?" Colt hesitated, then inclined his head toward a stack of saddles. "They could use some elbow grease. Tack room's that way." The tack room, cramped and redolent of tanned leather and linseed oil, held a neglected collection. Sadie located a bucket, saddle soap, and a worn sponge. The leather felt brittle and parched. As she rubbed and buffed, the rhythmic scraping of Colt's fork and the soft whinnies of the horses drifted in. This rustic existence was a universe removed from the placid routine of Harmony Creek. Later, Colt introduced her to Willow, a docile mare with a gleaming coat and a distinctive white marking on her face. "Gentle soul," he said, his hand stroking the horse's velvety muzzle. "She'll look after you." A tremor of apprehension ran through Sadie. Her equestrian resume consisted of a single pony ride in childhood. Colt boosted her into the saddle, where she perched awkwardly, feeling off-kilter. Willow stirred beneath her, and Sadie tightened her grip on the reins. "Easy there," Colt reassured her, his tone soothing. "Relax, she picks up on your nerves." He walked alongside, guiding Willow around the enclosure. The sun blazed down, and dust devils danced in their wake. Slowly, rhythm emerged, her body syncing with the mare's gait. The initial jitters dissolved, replaced by burgeoning excitement. She was riding, truly riding. That afternoon, Sadie assisted Colt with fence repairs, hammering nails into sun-bleached posts. Her hands, pampered by a desk job, quickly sprouted blisters. Colt observed her for a moment before intervening, demonstrating the proper grip and angle for efficient hammering. A fleeting brush of his hand against hers sent a surprising current through her. She glanced up, but his expression remained unreadable. As dusk painted the sky with streaks of fire and amethyst, they gathered kindling. Colt constructed a simple fire pit near the creek, the flames snapping and casting embers into the twilight. He offered her coffee, and they sat in comfortable quietude, captivated by the flickering blaze. "It's gorgeous here," Sadie murmured, breaking the stillness. Colt offered a curt nod, his attention riveted to the dancing flames. "It is. You seem content here," she ventured cautiously. He gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "Contentment is a luxury I can't afford." Sadie frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He paused, then took a lingering sip of his coffee. The firelight played across his weathered features, accentuating the etched lines of hardship around his eyes. "My brother Caleb and I built this place together, dreamed of a family, kids running wild." His voice caught, laden with grief. "He died a few years back. Logging accident." Sadie's heart clenched with sympathy. Gently she laid her hand on his arm. "I'm so sorry, Colt." He looked at her, his eyes reflecting a profound, soul-deep sorrow. "He was a better man. A damn sight better than me. He deserved all this." He tossed another log onto the fire, releasing a cascade of sparks. "I was supposed to be there that day, supposed to be working alongside him. But I was paying the price for the night before. Couldn't drag myself out of bed." A heavy silence descended, thick with remorse and unspoken pain. Sadie was at a loss for words. She desperately wanted to offer solace, but sensed that platitudes would ring hollow. "He left behind a wife, Sarah, and a little girl, Lily. Sarah eventually remarried, took off to Billings." Colt continued, his voice a low rasp. Lily still comes by now and then. She's got a soft spot for the horses." Understanding dawned. "You feel responsible for Caleb's death." Colt regarded her, startled. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you?" "Perhaps," Sadie conceded. "But it wasn't your fault, Colt. Such tragedies are unavoidable." "Maybe," he granted. "Oh, but that doesn't make it any easier to swallow." He rose abruptly. "Gotta check on the stock." Sadie watched him retreat, his silhouette stark against the fiery glow. She understood now the burden he carried, the source of the haunted look in his eyes. He was more than just a stoic cowboy. He was a man crippled by grief and guilt, struggling to navigate life's treacherous currents. Later, nestled in bed, staring into the inky blackness, Sadie pondered Colt's revelation. She thought of Caleb and Lily, and of the ranch, forged from dreams, now a testament to loss. And she wondered if, in some way, she could guide Colt back toward the light. The subsequent days slipped into a routine. Sadie continued her ranching apprenticeship, her formerly delicate hands growing calloused with each task. She tended to the chickens, collected eggs, and assisted Colt with mending fences. To her surprise, she discovered a knack for gardening, nurturing life from the arid soil. Colt remained reserved, yet there were fleeting moments when a flicker of warmth ignited in his cod. Gaze, a ghost of a smile gracing his lips. He began sharing glimpses of his life, stories about the ranch, the animals, the changing seasons. He even showed her how to fish in the creek, his fingers brushing against hers as he demonstrated how to bait the hook. One twilight, as they sat on the porch, watching the day bleed into night, Sadie inquired about Lily. "She's a bright kid," he said, his voice softening. "Sharp as a tack, loves to lose herself in a book. Does she remind you of Caleb?" Sadie probed gently. Colt nodded slowly. "Sometimes. She's got his eyes." After a pause, he added, "She's all I've got left of him." Sadie reached for his hand, her fingers interlacing with his. His hand was rough and weathered, yet his grasp was remarkably tender. "You're not alone, Colt," she whispered. "You have me." He searched her gaze intently. For a fleeting instant, she thought he might voice his feelings, but he averted his eyes, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Thank you, Sadie," he said softly. Later that night, nestled in bed, hope and unease warred within her. She knew she was falling for Colt, but she also understood that he was a man deeply scarred, and that healing would be a drawn-out process. She could only hope that she possessed enough time and enough love to help him find his way back to himself. Shadows of the past, the aroma of pine and moist soil hung heavy as Sadie strained, maneuvering a wheelbarrow overflowing with firewood toward the rough-hewn cabin. Unfamiliar muscles shrieked their complaints. A clear lecture from the land about her city softened life. She risked a glance upward. Colt stood on the porch, an indecipherable mask on his face. A brief spark, was it pride? Amusement? Flashed in his gaze before he pivoted to repair a frayed section of fence. The hammer's steady percussions marked the rhythm of her changed existence, a life still proving as stubbornly resistant as an unbroken mare. Then, a plume of ochre dust ballooned on the horizon, swelling at an alarming rate. She squinted, shading her brow. A cherry-painted truck, buffed to a mirror. "Shime!" roared up the drive, disrupting the afternoon peace. Its tires bit into the gravel as it halted, a gaudy interloper amid the ranch's collection of functional workhorses. The driver's door opened, and a woman unfurled Basha, herself, languid as a pampered feline. Hair like molten gold spilled across her shoulders, framing a visage that could inspire legends. Impeccably distressed jeans and a denim jacket that somehow managed to be both rugged and chic completed the picture. Not a rancher's wife, an intruder. Unease coiled in Sadie's gut. Colt straightened, the hammer's clang silenced. A tension coiled through him, a barely perceptible shift. He observed the approaching woman, his expression a puzzle of surprise and something caw. Else regret? Resignation? "Colt, darling." The woman's voice dripped with honey and artifice, setting Sadie's teeth on edge. Long time, no see. Colt remained fixed. "Clara," he stated, the name devoid of warmth. "What brings you here?" Clara strolled closer, her hips swaying with practiced allure. She reached out, her fingertips grazing his arm, the touch lingering a beat too long. Sadie, frozen to the wheelbarrow's handles, felt a stab of jealousy, unexpectedly fierce. She hadn't gauged how deeply Colt had burrowed under her skin, how fiercely she guarded even his taciturn attention. "Is that any way to greet a friend?" Clara's pout revealed lips painted a flawless crimson. "I was just passing through. Thought I'd pop in and see how you were faring. Marietta gets so lonely, you know." "Marietta's 20 miles in the opposite direction," Colt countered, his gaze unwavering. "And I doubt passing through is the operative phrase." Clara laughed, a crystalline cascade that amplified the silence. "All right, you got me. I missed you, Colt. Immoderately. I know our ending was abrupt, but some connections are destined, aren't they?" Eyes of startling emerald latched onto his, pleading and seductive. Sadie watched, feeling like an eavesdropper on a private tragedy. The air vibrated with unspoken history, a narrative she couldn't access. She yearned to vanish, to blend into the landscape, unseen. But she was pinned, a silent witness to a scene poised to shatter her fragile hopes. "Clara," Colt repeated, his voice stealing. "It's finished. Has been. For years. Has it, Colt?" Clara's smile was a mask, her eyes sharpening. She turned, finally acknowledging Sadie's presence. Her gaze swept over Sadie, noting her dusty clothes, work-roughened hands, the smudge of soil on her cheek. Disdain flickered across her features, swiftly concealed behind manufactured civility. "And who is this?" she inquired, her tone sugared poison. "The new hired help? Your taste seems to have evolved, darling." Colt moved, placing himself as a barrier between Clara and Sadie. "This is Sadie," he stated, his voice edged with a claim he hadn't earned. "Shea's helping me out." The unspoken words hung thickly. Helping me out wasn't commitment, partnership, or even fondness. It was a label, conveniently vague. Clara's smile broadened, never reaching her eyes. "Sadie," she echoed, lingering over the name. "Well, Sadie, welcome to MC Ray Ranch. I trust you're enjoying your arrangement?" "I am," Sadie managed, her voice fragile. She became acutely conscious of her unkempt state, the sheen of sweat, the ingrained dirt. Beside Clara, she felt colorless, unremarkable, immaterial. "Good," Clara responded, her attention snapping back to Colt. "Because I intend to stay a while. We have quite a bit of catching up to do, wouldn't you agree, Colt?" Colt's jaw clenched. His gaze flickered between Clara and Sadie, his expression a battleground. The ghosts of the past had materialized, uninvited and unwelcome, threatening to consume them all. Sadie knew, with a certainty that resonated in her bones, that her fledgling life was about to become excruciatingly complicated. "Come inside, Clara," Colt capitulated, the words devoid of inflection. He avoided Sadie's gaze. "I'll put on some coffee." Clara's face illuminated, hooking her arm through his. "That sounds divine, darling. Off to you." As Colt steered Clara toward the cabin, Sadie stood cemented in place, the wheelbarrow suddenly unbearable. The fragrance of kine and earth, once a solace, now felt oppressive. She watched them disappear inside, the door clicking shut like the fall of a guillotine. Her heart throbbed with an unforeseen ache, both physical and profoundly emotional. She had sought a fresh start in Montana, a chance at happiness. But the past, it seemed, was an inescapable shadow, threatening to eclipse the fragile hope she had nurtured. She slowly released the wheelbarrow, letting it crash to the earth. The firewood tumbled, a miniature landslide of shattered illusions. She turned and walked away, directionless, but driven by a visceral need to escape, to distance herself from Clara's presence, from the space she laid claim to. The ranch, once a sanctuary, transformed into a cage, and she was trapped, a pawn between the man she had grown to love and the specter of his past. Seeds of doubt, the aroma of pines, normally a balm, now pressed down on Sadie like a shroud. She circled the ranch house, boots grinding on the pebbled path, seeking refuge in the expansive Montana sky, its azure expanse a painful contrast to the leaden weight in her gut. Clara's arrival had soured the air. Marietta, a close-knit town, was a conduit for rumors that spread with alarming speed. Sadie's trip there yesterday, intended for basic supplies and a small memento of what? She now questioned. Optimism? Innocence? Had backfired. The general store's hum ceased abruptly upon her entrance. "Mrs. Henderson," typically voluble, offered a stiff nod before resuming a hushed exchange with two other women, their gazes flicking toward Sadie with thinly veiled judgment. Animosity hung thick. Sadie focused on gathering necessities, fighting the prickling awareness of being watched. Reaching for honey, she caught fragments of their hushed discussion. "From Kansas? Imagine!" Mrs. Henderson's voice, usually a melodic hum, now possessed a cutting edge. "Ooh, heard she left a trail of trouble. Something about ace candle, they say." That voice belonged to Martha, famed for her pies and equally sharp words. Sadie's blood ran cold, her hand hovering above the golden syrup. A scandal? She'd fled Harmony Creek for breathing room, not to escape some dark secret. Clara hinted at a broken promise. "Wouldn't you know?" And a hefty sum of money owed besides. Miss Gable, the reticent librarian, barely breathed the words, yet Sadie absorbed every syllable. Broken promise? Debt? Fabrications? All of it. No engagement, and the loan for her ailing mother was hardly scandalous. Heat flooded her face. She placed the honey jar down with a jarring thud that shattered the imposed silence. The trio turned, their faces betraying surprise and discomfort. Sadie met their stares, her chin elevated. "I have everything I require," she declared, her voice wavering slightly. She paid in strained quiet, then fled the store, whispers nipping at her heels like shadows. "Now, the trolling the ranch," those whispers echoed. Clara had wasted no time casting her as a pariah, a damaged soul on the run. And the townsfolk, eager consumers of gossip, had swallowed it whole. She spotted Colt approaching, his face unreadable. Since Clara's arrival, he'd become distant, preoccupied, almost wary. "Sadie," he began, his voice a somber rumble. "We need to talk." Her chest tightened. This was it. He'd heard the tales, believed them, and was about to banish her. "I know about what happened in town," he continued, his gaze glued to the ground. "About Clara's hand in it." "She's been effective, hasn't she?" Sadie replied, bitterness lacing her tone. "Weaving fables, poisoning the well." Colt's eyes lifted, reflecting a distress she couldn't decipher. "She's protective of this place." "Of me?" "Protective? Or covetous?" Anger surged. "And what of you, Colt? Do you credit her inventions? Do you envision me as some fallen woman fleeing a tarnished reputation?" He reached out, his hand hovering near her arm, then drew back. "I don't know what to think, Sadie. I just need clarity." "Clarity on what? That Clara is trying to undermine me? That she perceives me as a rival?" Sadie retreated, creating space between them. "Why are you yielding to her influence, Colt? Why let her shape your perception of me?" He raked his fingers through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "It's complicated, Sadie. Clara and I share a past. A past you're clearly not over," Sadie shot back, her voice edged with accusation. "Is that why I haven't felt your touch since she got here? Is that why you've become so detached and secretive?" He recoiled, as though struck. "That's unjust, Sadie." "Is it?" "You summoned me here, Colt. Your letters painted a future brimming with promise. But now I feel like a pawn in a game I don't comprehend. Something dark and tangled." "I never intended this," he said, his voice imploring. "Yet here we are, Colt. And I don't know if I can remain, knowing Clara is turning others against me, realizing you remain bound to her in some fashion." Tears threatened, blurring her vision. She averted her gaze. The immense Montana sky, once a beacon of hope, now appeared limitless and empty, mirroring the void in her soul. "I need solitude," she whispered. She moved away, abandoning Colt, a silhouette against the fading light, his face a mask of regret. That night, the silence in the spare room was a heavy blanket. Sadie fixed her gaze on the ceiling, shadows twisting in the corners. Misgivings clawed at her, whispering venomous questions. Had she been naive to trust Colt's words? Had she idealized a man still shackled to his history? She recalled Harmony Creek, the small, predictable existence she'd abandoned. It lacked excitement, but it was secure. Here, in Montana, everything was uncertain, turbulent. She was a stranger, vulnerable to slander and suspicion. She shut her eyes, attempting to quell the turmoil, the doubts, the ache, but the whispers persisted, sowing seeds of unease that threatened to suffocate the fragile hope that had taken root. Perhaps Clara was right. Perhaps she didn't belong. Perhaps she should simply gather her belongings and return to Kansas, to the familiar, however unfulfilling. Sleep offered no respite, only disjointed dreams haunted by accusatory murmurs and Colt's haunted gaze. When morning broke, the sunlight streaming through the window felt bleak and unwelcome. The hidden letter sleep remained elusive for Sadie. The familiar cadence of the old house, usually a soothing balm, echoed the storm raging within her. Colt's stammered account of his history with Clara played like a broken record in her mind. His averted gaze, the rigidity in his jaw, signals of a concealed truth. She thrashed, the bedclothes twisting around her, feeling as confined as a hawk in a cage. Finally, surrendering to wakefulness, she rose. Moonlight painted elongated figures across the room as she drifted to the desk nestled in the corner, a legacy from Colt's father. She wasn't seeking anything in particular, perhaps just a distraction, a tangible piece of his life to dissect under the cold light of her suspicions. Her fingers traced the worn surface, smoothed by years of use. It felt sterile, detached. She slid open the top drawer, anticipating mundane contents like bills or ranch ledgers, but it was mostly bare, save for some stray pencils and a dulled silver timepiece. A prick of disappointment, but she persisted, pulling the drawer out further, probing the hidden depths. That's when she spotted it. Tucked in the rear corner, nearly obscured, was a folded piece of paper, aged to a parchment hue. Her pulse quickened as she unfolded it gingerly. The paper crackled softly, the sound magnified in the silent room. A letter, penned in an elegant feminine hand, clearly not Clara's bold script. A name headed the page, Elizabeth. Beneath the greeting, the ink had faded with time, yet the words remained legible. "Colt, my dearest friend," it began. Sadie's breath caught in her throat. "I can't express my gratitude for all you've done, for shouldering the blame, for shielding me. I realize this will tarnish your reputation, jeopardize your future, but I was desperate. I never intended for it to escalate this far. Please, forgive the pain I've inflicted. My prayer is that day you'll find joy, a love that eclipses this. I will never forget your sacrifice, Colt. Never." The letter was unsigned. A single, desiccated forget-me-not pressed within its folds. Comprehension dawned as Sadie reread the missive, the words solidifying into a narrative far removed from Clara's concocted tale. Colt had assumed responsibility for some transgression, a burden that marred his reputation. He had relinquished his future to protect an Elizabeth, and Clara had exploited that devotion, holding him hostage to the past. Abruptly, everything coalesced. Colt's hesitancy regarding Clara, his guarded demeanor, the wince at her name, these weren't indicators of lingering affection, but of bitter constraint. He wasn't in love, he was ensnared. The rumors Clara had propagated about Sadie, the whispers that haunted her in town. A calculated maneuver to isolate her, to cement Colt's obligation to remain with Clara. A surge of fury pulsed through Sadie, not directed at Colt, but at Clara, at her predatory machinations, and her heartless disregard for truth. How dare she twist Colt's compassion, his unwavering loyalty? How dare she attempt to shatter the nascent bond they shared? Yet, beneath the anger, a profound admiration took root. Colt, despite his own suffering and losses, had chosen to protect another, at significant personal cost. He had borne that burden quietly, allowing Clara to manipulate him with its weight. He was an honorable man, genuinely so, and Sadie had almost retreated because of Clara's poisonous inventions. She carefully restored the letter to its concealed location, her hands trembling slightly. Truth possessed a transformative power, reshaping the emotional landscape. What had appeared as a straightforward tale of a haunted man was revealed as a complex weaving of sacrifice, manipulation, and steadfast loyalty. She needed to speak with Colt, to fully grasp the dimensions of what had transpired. More importantly, she needed to convey her belief in him, to affirm the integrity Clara had labored to conceal. She turned from the desk and returned to the bed, no longer restless, but emboldened with newfound resolve. The path ahead would be arduous, yet she no longer felt fear. She knew the truth, and she was prepared to champion their future, to seize the opportunity to construct a life with a man who had demonstrated, in the most profound terms, that he was worthy of her affection. As dawn painted the sky with streaks of rose and gold, Sadie discovered Colt in the barn, attending to a newborn calf. He looked weary, worry etched across his features. He glanced up at her approach, his gaze wary. "Sadie, what brings you out here so early?" She inhaled deeply, the aroma of hay and earth filling her senses. "I found a letter, Colt, in your desk." His expression turned stony. "What letter?" "From Elizabeth," she stated softly. "The one you shielded." He flinched, averting his eyes. That's private, Sadie. It concerns me," she asserted, drawing nearer. "Because it clarifies everything. It explains your reticence, why you allow Clara to control you. You sacrificed yourself for her, didn't you?" Silence met her words. His jaw clenched tight. "Tell me, Colt," she urged. "Tell me the whole truth." He finally met her gaze, his eyes holding a raw pain that resonated with her. "It was a long time ago," he said, his voice raspy. "Elizabeth was young and naive. She made a mistake that would have ruined her. I couldn't allow it, so I stepped in." "And Clara knew," Sadie whispered. "She knew what you did, and she exploited it to control you." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the barn floor. Clara always had a knack for getting what she wanted. Sadie reached out, taking his hand in hers, their fingers entwining. His hand was rough with calluses, yet his grip was surprisingly tender. "You're a decent man, Colt," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You acted according to your conscience, and you don't deserve to be penalized for it for the remainder of your days." He looked up, searching her face. Do you believe me, Sadie?" "Implicitly," she replied without hesitation. "I believe you, and I believe you deserve a fresh start, a chance to be happy, a chance to break free from Clara's shackles." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the most genuine she'd seen since Clara's arrival. "Thank you, Sadie," he said. That's more meaningful than you can fathom. What's our next move? She asked, her voice laced with resolve. We can't let Clara maintain this hold on you. We have to fight back. He squeezed her hand, his eyes burning with a newfound determination. You're right, he affirmed. It's time this ended. It's time for the truth to come out, regardless of the fallout. The fire snapped in the hearth, flinging off sparks that pirouetted like imps. Sadie was transfixed, struggling to quell the shivers that plagued her hands. The letter lay on the scarred pine, a stark condemnation. Inside the cramped cabin, the air hung stagnant, thick with withheld confessions and the phantoms of Colt's history. His coffee remained untouched, the wisps of steam a fleeting mirage of comfort in the strained atmosphere. The Montana wind shrieked outside, an echo of the storm raging within her. Colt, she ventured at last, her voice a fragile thread. Tell me about Elizabeth. He recoiled, a tick jumping in his jaw. His gaze darted away, lost in the dance of the flames as if seeking absolution in their depths. The silence stretched, broken only by the howling wind and the fire's staccato bursts, each beat amplifying her apprehension. Time crawled before he finally spoke, his voice gravelly, laced with an ache she was only beginning to fathom. Elizabeth was a friend, he started, his words deliberate, chosen with care. A long time ago. Sadie pressed onward, her voice firm despite the tightening in her chest. A friend you shielded, a friend Clara wields as a weapon. He squeezed his eyes shut, a wave of exhaustion etching deeper lines on his face. When he opened them again, the blue was obscured by a profound sorrow. Clara shouldn't have revealed that letter to you. She aimed to expel me, Colt. She wanted me to understand my insignificance. Sadie reached for him, her fingertips grazing his calloused hand. He didn't flinch. But I'm adrift, aren't I? Unmoored. Not here, not anywhere, unless you anchor me. His eyes finally locked onto hers, revealing a vulnerability that shattered her carefully erected defenses. It was an error, Sadie, a lifetime ago. I was young, impetuous. Elizabeth was vulnerable, and I acted as I believed I should. And Clara capitalizes on that, Sadie finished for him. She knows you'll always be her shield, even now. He offered a slow nod, the admission a tangible burden. She's always excelled at projecting helplessness. But what about you, Colt? Sadie asked, her voice a desperate entreaty. What about your own desires? What about us? He squeezed her hand, the pressure reassuring. This transcends Clara, Sadie. It's about you. It's always been about you. Then enlighten me, she urged, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tell me what you crave. He surged to his feet, pacing the confines of the cabin like a trapped predator. The flickering firelight sculpted long, undulating shadows across his countenance, accentuating the harsh lines carved by years of struggle and regret. He raked a hand through his dark hair, his movements restless. I erred, Sadie, he confessed, his voice thick with anguish. God knows I've accumulated more than my fair share. Elizabeth, Clara, they're all the fruit of choices sown long ago. Choices that haunt me every waking moment. He ceased his pacing, pivoting to face her. His eyes pools of raw honesty that stole her breath. I never anticipated a reprieve. Not after everything. Not after. He faltered, unable to voice the depths of his suffering. Then you appeared, he continued, his voice gentling. Your letters, they were a lifeline. A purpose to greet each sunrise. A promise of something brighter. He approached her, his gaze never wavering. He knelt before her, cradling both of her hands in his. His touch was warm, grounding, a stark contrast to the tempest raging within her. "I'm unworthy of you, Sadie," he said, his voice choked. "I'm damaged goods, burdened with a past that could fill a train car. But I vow to you, I will dedicate every breath to becoming the man you deserve, the man you envision." He delved into her eyes, his gaze searching, beseeching. "I love you, Sadie, more profoundly than I ever thought possible. You've resurrected me." Sadie's breath snagged in her throat. Tears sprang to her eyes, blurring her vision. She reached out, framing his face in her hands. His skin was coarse, weathered, yet his touch was tender, loving. "Then prove it, Colt," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Prove your love. Prove that I eclipse your past. Prove your willingness to fight for us." He nodded, his eyes burning with newfound resolve. "How?" "Sever ties with Clara," Sadie declared, her voice unwavering. "Declare that you choose me. Declare that Elizabeth no longer holds you captive." The words echoed in the air, charged with implication. Colt's features hardened, a flash of the old Colt, the stoic cowboy, returning. Sadie held her breath, waiting, praying. He rose, pulling her up with him. He embraced her tightly, his arms a safe haven. She felt the steady thrum of his heart against her chest, a rhythm that calmed her frantic pulse. "I will," he vowed, his voice firm. "I'll tell her everything. I'll ensure she understands the shift, that I've been transformed." He lifted her chin, his gaze ensnaring hers. "And I'll be your shield, Sadie. I swear it. From Clara, from Elizabeth, from anyone who threatens you. You are mine, and I will not relinquish you." His words were a salve to her wounded spirit, a guarantee of safety and stability in a world that had offered neither. She recognized that the path ahead would be fraught with obstacles. Clara wouldn't surrender without resistance. But for the first time since her arrival in Montana, Sadie detected a flicker of optimism, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she could carve out a life here, a life alongside Colt. "When?" she breathed, her voice barely audible. "Tomorrow," he replied, his voice resolute. "At first light, I'll ride into town and resolve this irrevocably." He kissed her then, a deep, fervent kiss that spoke volumes. A kiss that promised a future, brimming with love and commitment. A kiss that sealed their destiny, entwining them in a bond that transcended the shadows of the past. As they parted, Sadie understood that their journey would be arduous and long, but she also knew that she was no longer alone. Colt was by her side, and together they could confront any challenge. A decision had been made, and a battle was imminent. Reckless desperation, a mournful wind keened through the canyon, mirroring the tempest within Clara. From the bunkhouse window she spied on Sadie, a jealous serpent twisting in her gut. Sadie, tickling with a ranch hand as she snugged her saddle cinch, appeared irritatingly at ease. Colt's haven, Clara's, she reminded herself, a bitter tang on her tongue, the birthright denied. A reckless scheme sparked. Crude, perhaps, but effective. Not murder, precisely. A staged mishap, though, to remind everyone, Colt especially, who truly belonged, who understood the land's capricious nature. The aged bridge, a relic spanning the creek that fed the river, offered an isolated opportunity to reach the northern pasture where their cattle grazed. Its weathered timbers were ideal for her purpose, Clara bided her time until Sadie, heading toward that very pasture, rode alone. Clutching a tarnished handsaw pilfered from the barn, she stole towards the bridge. The wind, a frigid lash, blinded her as she worked, each breath clouding in the frigid air. She chose a vital support, sawing deep, nearly severing it completely, leaving just enough integrity for deceit. A horse and rider would ensure its collapse. Guilt, a constricting band, choked her, but she shoved it down. This was for Colt, for their shared destiny. Sadie was an intrusion, a phantom conjured by ink on paper. She didn't belong here. Meanwhile, Sadie luxuriated in a tranquility she hadn't known existed before she arrived. The expansive Montana sky seemed to absorb every worry. The horse's steady gait, the mingling fragrances of sage and pine, the authentic grit of ranch laborette was all so grounding. Even Colt, with his taciturn nature and unexpected dazzling grins, felt genuine. She hummed a nameless tune, nearing the bridge. The creek babbled below, its icy water hurtling towards the river. She urged her mount, a sturdy bay named Buster, onto the crossing. The aged wood groaned under Buster's weight, a sound lost to the wind. Then, a fracturing report split the air as the weakened beam gave way. The bridge buckled, tilting dangerously. Buster shrieked, his hooves scrambling futilely against the collapsing planks. Sadie, caught unawares, instinctively grasped for the reins, too late. The structure surrendered, pitching both into the frigid torrent. The liquid shock stole Sadie's breath. She surfaced sputtering, her lungs aflame. Buster, panicked, flailed beside her, each hoof a peril. The current, relentless, dragged them towards the churning rapids. Raw, primal fear seized her. She battled to stay afloat, her numb fingers seeking purchase on the slick rocks bordering the bank. She needed to break free from Buster. His thrashing threatened to drown them both. Upon the ridge, Clara watched, her face contorted with horror. This wasn't the plan. Drowning wasn't the intent. A mere scare, to send her scurrying back from whence she came. Now, there was no undoing it. Colt, toiling in the barn, registered the sharp crack of splintering wood, followed by a horse's scream of terror. Dread iced his veins. He recognized that sound. Echoes of the past, of Elizabeth. He cut the memory short. Instinct told him something was terribly wrong. He burst from the barn, his heart a frantic drum. He scanned the pasture, his gaze darting over the landscape. Then he saw the yawning emptiness where the bridge had stood, the chaotic movement in the water below. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the creek, adrenaline surging through him. Shedding boots and jacket, ignoring the wind's bite, he plunged into the icy water. The cold was a brutal assault, stealing his breath and numbing his body. He battled toward Sadie, who clung desperately to a rock, her face ashen with terror. Buster, thankfully, had managed to scramble onto the bank, trembling and spent. "Sadie," Colt yelled, his voice raspy. "Hold on." He reached her, his powerful arms encircling her waist. She gripped him, shaking uncontrollably. "The current!" she gasped, her voice a thread against the water's roar. "It's too strong. I've got you," he reassured, his voice steady. "Just hold tight." He struggled back toward the bank, wrestling the relentless force. The rocks were treacherous, the water unforgiving, that he pressed on, fueled by a primal protectiveness. Finally, he hauled her onto the bank, collapsing beside her, both shivering violently. He drew her close, embracing her, trying to impart his warmth. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice thick with concern. She shook her head, teeth chattering. Just cold. He looked at her, truly looked at her, seeing the stark fear etched on her face, the fragility masked by her resilient spirit. And he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within him, that he would defend her at any cost. He glimpsed Clara standing on the ridge, her face a pallid mask of guilt. He knew, with a glance, that she was the architect of this catastrophe. His eyes narrowed, hardening with a cold fury Sadie had never witnessed. He assisted her to her feet. "Let's get you back to the house," he said, his voice laced with danger. "Then we're going to have a talk." The animosity pouring from Colt was a tangible presence, a shimmering distortion of the frigid air. He confronted Clara, Sadie tucked protectively behind him, draped in his coat. The river's thunder filled the air, a constant churning reminder of Sadie's near fate at Clara's hands. "You tried to murder her," he declared, each word a honed blade, utterly devoid of warmth. Clara's carefully constructed facade fractured. "Don't be ridiculous, Colt," she retorted, a tremor undermining her bravado. "It was an accident. That dilapidated bridge was destined to give way eventually. Accidents don't involve sabotage supports, Clara. I witnessed your handiwork. I saw you." His words were precise strikes, each one finding its mark. Clara's gaze flickered, searching for an egress, a palatable fabrication. Finding none, she reached for her preferred weapon, manipulative theatrics. "Colt, darling, you can't possibly believe this interloper. She's a stranger, a purchased bride. I am the one who truly understands you." She advanced a step, hand extended in supplication. "We are meant to be together. You know it." Colt remained unmoved, his expression glacial. "You comprehend nothing, Clara. Only what you choose to. You perceive only your desired reality." He inclined his head toward the churning water. "Did you fathom Sadie's mortality? Did you even care?" The question lingered, a heavy indictment. Clara's mask disintegrated completely, revealing the bitter, envious woman beneath. "She was stealing you. After our shared history, after all those years, she simply arrives and usurps what's mine." Her voice escalated into a raw shriek. Despite her fear, Sadie felt a jolt of defiant anger. "I stole nothing, Clara. Colt isn't a possession to be claimed." Clara whirled on her, eyes burning with malice. "You. This is all because of you. Your uninvited presence has ruined everything." She surged forward, fingers curved into talons. With unexpected swiftness, Colt intervened, positioning himself as a bulwark against Clara's aggression. He seized her wrists, his grip unyielding. "That is quite all. Enough, Clara. It's finished." "Release me, Colt," she screamed, struggling in his grasp. "She doesn't deserve you. She doesn't deserve any of this." "You are the one who deserves nothing," Colt countered, his voice a flinty rasp. "You don't deserve my regard, my esteem, or even my compassion. You attempted to harm someone I hold dear, an act beyond forgiveness." He released her wrists, but his stance alone was enough to restrain her. "Vacate my property, Clara, and never darken my doorstep again." Clara stood, breathless, her features twisted with rage and humiliation. For a fleeting moment, Sadie anticipated another outburst, a final desperate gambit. But then a sense of defeat seemed to wash over her. The fight evaporated, leaving behind only desolation. "Fine," she spat, her voice hollow. "You will both rue this day, Colt. Mark my words." She pivoted and stalked towards her horse, Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Mounting with clumsy haste, she spurred the animal into a reckless gallop, vanishing down the road in a plume of dust. The ensuing silence was profound, pierced only by the river's relentless surge. Colt turned to Sadie, his expression gentling. "Are you unharmed?" he inquired, genuine concern etched in his features. Sadie nodded, still trembling but deeply grateful. "I'm fine. Thank you." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a blend of relief and admiration. "I dread to think what would have transpired had you not been here." Colt reached out, gently sweeping a stray lock of hair from her cheek. "I would never allow any harm to befall you, Sadie. Not under my protection." He paused, his gaze intense and unwavering. "I meant every word I spoke to her. You warrant all the good things life has to offer. Happiness, a fulfilling existence. You are worthy of everything." Sadie's heart soared. "And what of yourself, Colt?" she asked softly. "Do you believe you deserve such things?" He averted his gaze towards the river, the shadows of his past momentarily clouding his face. "I honestly don't know," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "My past is littered with choices I regret." Sadie moved closer, enfolding his hand in hers. Her touch was a beacon of warmth and reassurance. "We all stumble, Colt. What defines us is what we do with those missteps. You mustn't allow the past to shackle you." He looked back at her, his eyes searching, probing. "It's never that simple, Sadie. The past, it clings like a persistent shadow." "But you possess the power to break free," she insisted. "You have the capacity to reshape your destiny, to forge a brighter future, free from the burdens of yesterday. A future brimming with happiness." She squeezed his hand, her conviction unwavering. "And I yearn to share that future with you, Colt, if you will permit it." A faint smile flickered at the corner of Colt's mouth, a tentative glimmer of hope. "Are you certain, Sadie? You have witnessed my flaws. You've glimpsed the weight of my burdens. And I have also witnessed your inherent goodness, Colt," she countered, her voice ringing with sincerity. "I see your kindness, your unwavering strength, your fierce loyalty. And I see the profound capacity for love that resides within you." She paused, drawing a deep breath. "I believe in you, Colt McRae, and I believe in the potential for us." Her words acted as a key, unlocking the final vestiges of his self-doubt. He scrutinized her face, truly seeing her, and found not a mere stranger, not a mail-order bride, but a woman who had entered his life and resurrected his capacity for hope. He drew her close, enveloping her in a tender embrace. "I am unworthy of you, Sadie Blake," he murmured, his voice thick with barely contained emotion. "But I pledge to spend every remaining day attempting to earn your love, your trust, your devotion." He lowered his head and kissed her, a kiss that was a symphony of passion, gratitude, and the solemn promise of a shared future. The river continued its relentless roar, but now it resonated not with menace, but with a harmonious chorus, a hymn of second chances, of redemption found, and of a love that had weathered the harshest storms and emerged with newfound strength. As they stood entwined, Sadie acknowledged that their odyssey was far from complete. Challenges would undoubtedly arise. Obstacles would inevitably present themselves. However, she also knew that they could surmount any adversity, so long as they had each other. And that, she realized with crystalline clarity, was all that truly mattered. The confrontation with Clara had been a victory, but more significantly, it had marked a pivotal transformation. It had purged the lingering shadows, cleared the atmospheric tension, and paved the way for a future brimming with hope, love, and the radiant promise of a new beginning. The Montana wind howled around them, but within the sanctuary of Colt's embrace, Sadie felt secure, cherished, and finally, truly home. A Montana sunset, the midday sun beat down on Sadie's back as she wrestled with a warped plank of wood, trying to align it with the frame of the rebuilt barn wall. The air hummed with the buzz of insects and the rhythmic clang of Colt's hammer. He moved with a quiet strength, his brow furrowed in concentration as he secured another beam. Dust motes danced in the sunlight filtering through the incomplete roof, illuminating the sweat glistening on his skin. She watched him, a small smile playing on her lips. They were building something together, piece by piece. Not just a barn, but a future. Need a hand there, darlin'? Colt's voice cut through her thoughts. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, leaving a streak of dirt across his tanned skin. Sadie straightened up, stretching her aching back. Just about got it, but an extra pair of hands wouldn't hurt. He chuckled, the sound warm and comforting. He moved beside her, his presence a solid anchor against the vast Montana sky. Together, they wrestled the plank into place, the wood finally settling with a satisfying thud. "Thanks," Sadie said, breathing a sigh of relief. "I swear, this old barn is fighting us every step of the way." "It's got character," Colt replied, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "Like someone else I know." Sadie playfully shoved him. "Oh, hush, you're just saying that. Maybe," he conceded, his gaze softening. "But it's true. You've got more grit than anyone I've ever met, Sadie Blake." She met his gaze, her heart swelling with a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. "And you, Colt McRae, you've got a heart of gold, even if you try to hide it sometimes." They stood there for a moment, suspended in the quiet intimacy of the shared task, the vast Montana landscape stretching out around them. The air was thick with the scent of pine and freshly cut wood, a heady mix that spoke of new beginnings. As the day wore on, they worked in companionable silence, their movements synchronized, their purpose united. They replaced rotted beams, hammered in nails, and smoothed rough edges, slowly but surely transforming the dilapidated barn into a sturdy structure, a testament to their resilience and their love. Finally, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, they laid down their tools. Exhausted but satisfied, they walked hand in hand towards the porch of the ranch house. The porch swing creaked gently as they settled onto it, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant call of a coyote. The air was cool and crisp, a welcome relief from the heat of the day. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sadie murmured, gazing out at the breathtaking panorama. The mountains in the distance were silhouetted against the fiery sky, their jagged peaks softened by the fading light. Colt wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "It is," he agreed, his voice low and husky. "But not as beautiful as you." Sadie leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes. "I never thought I'd find this," she whispered. "A place like this, a love like this." "Me neither," Colt admitted, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. "I thought I was destined to be alone, haunted by the ghosts of my past." "But you're not alone," Sadie said firmly, lifting her head to look into his eyes. "You have me, and I'm not going anywhere." He cupped her face in his hands, his gaze intense. "I know," he said softly, "and I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret that decision." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink below the horizon, the colors fading into a soft, velvety darkness. The stars began to emerge, twinkling like diamonds scattered across a black canvas. "Do you ever think about the letters?" Sadie asked, breaking the silence. Colt smiled. "Every day. I still can't believe that a simple pen pal program could lead to all of this." "Me neither," Sadie agreed. "It's funny, isn't it? How something so small can change your whole life." "It was more than just a pen pal program, Sadie," Colt said, his voice serious. "It was fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it. We were meant to find each other." Sadie reached out and took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "I believe that," she said. "I truly do." Later that evening, after a simple supper of stew and cornbread, Sadie sat at the old wooden desk in her room, a pen in her hand and a fresh piece of paper before her. She was writing to her friend Martha back in Harmony Creek. "Dearest Martha," she wrote, "I hardly know where to begin. So much has happened since my last letter. The ranch is slowly but surely coming back to life. Colt and I have been working tirelessly, rebuilding the barn, repairing fences, and planting a garden. It's hard work, but it's also incredibly rewarding. There's something so satisfying about creating something with your own two hands, about seeing the fruits of your labor grow and flourish. But more than that, Martha, I found something I never thought I would. I found love. Real, deep, abiding love. Colt is everything I ever dreamed of and more. He's strong and kind, gentle and fierce, and he makes me laugh every single day. He's also been hurt deeply, and he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders sometimes. But I'm here for him, Martha. I'm here to help him carry that weight, to remind him that he's not alone, and to show him that he's worthy of love and happiness." "Clara is gone." Colt confronted her, and she finally admitted everything. "It was a difficult and painful experience, but it brought us even closer together. We're moving forward now, leaving the past behind us and focusing on the future. The sunsets here are unlike anything I've ever seen. The sky explodes with color every evening, painting the mountains in hues of orange, pink, and purple. It's breathtaking. And every time I watch the sunset with Colt, I feel a sense of peace and contentment that I never thought possible. I know you're probably wondering if I'm ever coming back to Harmony Creek. And the truth is, Martha, I don't know. This place, this life, this manna they've captured my heart. I can't imagine living anywhere else. But I promise I'll come visit soon. I want you to see all of this for yourself, to meet Colt, and to understand why I've fallen so deeply in love with this wild and beautiful place. Until then, take care of yourself, my dear friend, and never give up on the possibility of finding your own Montana sunset. With love, Sadie." She folded the letter carefully, sealed it in an envelope, and addressed it to Martha. As she placed it on the desk, ready to be mailed the next day, she couldn't help but smile. Her heart was full, her spirit soaring. She had found her place in the world, her love, her happiness. And it all started with a simple letter sent to a lonely cowboy in Montana.